Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Dave Pelzer is the author of a series of books, including A Child Called It, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for a record-setting 6 years. In that book, he chronicles a childhood of almost unbelievable abuse. At one point, one weekend, he was sure his mother intended to kill him, and that's when a network of caring adults stepped in to save him. Dave has gone on to a life of great adventure. His resilience, humor, and simple love of living will inspire you. In his most recent book, Return to the River, he looks back on it all with love and gratitude. This podcast is about living your best life. Dave suggests you listen twice, once for the story and once to absorb the wisdom of a life well lived. Please welcome the remarkable, kind, and funny Dave Pelzer to Bump in the Road. Dave, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, I think rather than going around the horn, my story is I am the luckiest, most blessed person that I know. And I say that humbly because I study greatness in people of intelligence or people who are not so nice and very angry and very evil. And out of all the people I've studied, I have to say I've had the most adventures in my life. And it didn't start out that way, as you know. And we've known each other on and off for a while. That my life was very hard as a child. I lived in a basement from starting age 4 to around age 12, and I was horribly abused and isolated, and I had a lot of issues. And thank goodness I had people in my community, teachers and a nurse and a principal. They put their careers on the line because back then we didn't have penal codes to help children or those trying to protect children. And I was placed into foster care and, given the love and support I needed and just kind of went from there. I joined the Air Force at age 18 and was a swamp cook in Florida for a few years. And eventually I got a slot to fly for the Air Force, which was a huge dream for me because as a child, I used to read about adventure stories and people flying and, all that big thing. And then I got involved when I was flying in juvenile hall working as a counselor, and I had a young child. And I thought, maybe I can assist in the late 80s, because in the late 80s in California, everybody was a victim of something, some atrocity, some situation. And a lot of people just didn't seem to step out of that situation. They kind of wallowed a lot. And I came up with something called, and it was a new word called resilience. Duh. If you can survive cancer, you can survive the flu. If you can survive a bad divorce, you can survive an argument. If you can survive being, violated as a child, I think you survive to be happy, to be productive, and do something with that message to help out others. So eventually, when I was active duty, I became the California Volunteer of the Year, which was a big thing. And then a couple years later, after that, I was the one of the country's 10 outstanding young Americans, like my heroes, Chuck Yeager and Walt Disney and Elvis Presley, for goodness sakes, and Anne Bancroft, beautiful people. And then years later, I was one of the recipients of the National Jefferson Award, which is the Pulitzer Prize of Public Service. At the same time, I wrote a few books, and we had some successes with that. A Child Called It was the #1 book in the world. And I'm not saying it to brag. I just still can't believe that. The average stay on the New York Times is about 3 to 4 weeks. And the first book was on that list for well over 6 years. And then years later, when I was retiring, because I was on the road doing in-service training and making 4, 5, 7 appearances a day, 200-300 days a year, decided to slow down. And at age 52, I somehow fell into becoming a firefighter. And then a few years after that, I became a fire captain, and I decided, okay, let's Jack Bauer, John Wick this. Let's be a fire captain at not one, but two separate districts. And in California, Northern California, we're pretty busy. There's always something, the world's always going to be on fire. There's a flood, there's a mudslide, there's cars and all those things. And then recently, I finished book 9. It just got released a couple weeks ago, called Return to the River. And it's a romantic, haunting love story about, finding your presence and where you're at in your life and making decisions. But for me, I'm always doing something. And I kind of like that. I see a lot of people, they're the walking dead. They're just waiting to die. I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to plant flowers. Oh my God, I got to let's do this. I mean, I'm more, my grandson looks at me like, dude, slow down. Let's go. Let's play. Let's do something. Let's get into trouble.
The
life for you folks.
The life you describe is so far removed from your childhood life. If you could just give my listeners a very brief synopsis of what your childhood was like.
Well, and I'm looking at it now, and it really scares me more now than being in it then. Because when you're in the middle of something, you're just surviving. And what it was, my mother was simply just sick. And knowing what I know about psychology, and I'm kind of what they call a psychological voyeur, I've studied. I don't think my mother ever had a chance. She had 3 babies in less than 4 years. There was alcoholism involved. She was mentally, if not physically, abused as well. And she was raised to keep her mouth shut, marry Mr. Man, and just, live a happy Donna Reed type life. And that just doesn't work. And it escalated, that I was targeted as a very young child. And the excuse was, well, David's a bad boy. This is why he has to be punished. And it got so crazy that, again, I lived in the basement. My siblings were not allowed to have anything to do with me. I was the family slave. One time at age 4, it was an accident. My mom pulled my arm out of its socket and then lied to the doctor, saying I had somehow mysteriously fallen out of bed. And she had tried to catch me as I was falling out of bed. And that doesn't make any sense at all. To the point that at age 8, my arm was burned on a gas stove for several seconds, or years later, I was stabbed just below the heart. And I really thought at that time, when I was stabbed, it was an accident. It wasn't premeditated. I thought, okay, this is so bizarre. She cannot hide the secret. And my biggest thing, Pat, is I just wanted to go to the hospital to have clean sheets. That's all I wanted. I wanted food and clean sheets, and this is finally over. Because she was lying to the nurses at school and the staff at school, and they all knew what was going on, but they just couldn't help me because they didn't have those penal codes. So finally, at age 12, I showed up to school in such a condition that the teachers and the principal and the nurse, they called the authorities, and I was placed in the immediate protective foster care. And just, I was on my way after that. I was, it's amazing, like being a fire captain. I remember we showed up on scene during the Tubbs fire in 2017.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh, you firefighters, you saved us. You saved us. I said, no, we did not. The real heroes were the police that went door to over 5,700 homes in a matter of a few hours to evacuate everybody. So in my case, my superheroes were my social workers and foster parents. If I've done anything good with my life, you have to go, how was I raised? I was raised as an animal. I didn't know anything about hygiene. I didn't speak the language because I was not allowed to speak in my mother's house, and in part because I swallowed ammonia twice in 24 hours. That's why I speak a little different. My cadence is different. I even breathe a little different than everybody else. But the bottom line, Pat, is this. And if your audience wants to take down a note, this is a good note. Everybody has something. None of us are virginal. None of us are pure. We've all have either had a broken heart or been mistreated. Someone has done us wrong. Someone has maybe hurt us in such a way. We're all per se a little damaged. But I think you survive for a reason. And at the end of the day, you want to survive to be happy. It's amazing. People, they think they got to lose weight or, again, win $1 million, or, once we go on vacation, we can relax. I'm going, be happy now. Be happy now. And I'm just very lucky because at age 14, I've been in foster care for a year and a half. And my foster mom was on one side of me, my social worker's on the other side. And this child psychiatrist, pardon me, stated that because of my abuse was so lengthy and because I was so isolated, there was no chance in heck that I was going to make it in normal society, and predicted that by the time I was 18 or 20, that I would be dead or in prison. And this is another little tidbit. I knew it in my heart, like Clark Kent. He's overly affable. He's slow. He doesn't fit in. He's kind of a geeky guy. But on the inside, where no one sees, he's faster than a speeding bullet. He can jump over tall buildings in a single bound. And we all have that persona in a sense. So at this little meeting, I remember it was either my foster mother or social worker stated, David, if you can survive all that you did without any help, without any training, then I expect nothing but greatness from you. And it just stuck with me. It's a number, Pat, it's 73-1 for every one negative we receive, particularly as children. It takes about 73 positives just to break even. A lot of people forget that. And I just absorbed that one little thing, and then another little thing, and another little thing. And right time, right place, I call it the tumbler effect, when things just somehow spiritually or just magically come together. And that's why I think for the most part of my life, I've had a lot of challenges. If I've succeeded in one thing, I've failed it 1,000 times. But I'm very proud to say that I've always given everything my best shot. And I learned how to do that when I was a child.
One of the things you also said was hurt people hurt people.
Yes. Bullies were bullied in a sense. And my mom was horribly, horribly hurt. And that's how she was raised by her domineering mother. And we didn't, in my mom's day, she was raised in Salt Lake City in the 1930s. And that should scare a lot of people right there, because the mentality was men, dogs, and way, way below that, women folk. And she wasn't allowed to express herself. We didn't talk about religion or finances or your past, let alone talking about either sex or alcohol or anything. And I truly believe she wouldn't have had a chance, even with all that we have available today, that we're hopefully a much more open society, and we can talk about anything. And that's what I do as a comedian or as a persona. I'll talk about anything. I want people to feel comfortable. If I can make people laugh in the middle of a firestorm, or a medical call, or even like in the military, like, okay, let's do a joke or two, then we can talk about things and hopefully put them into perspective. Because I think a lot of people, Pat, they look at the problem or what they think it still is, rather than what it was some time ago. And it breaks my heart when people survive a horrendous situation, but they're so miserable for the rest of their life. You don't live to be miserable. I got a good one for you, Pat. Here you go. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're taking down a note, write this down. Here it is. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. That's Bay Area writer extraordinaire Jack London. Another quote that I used to tell my young firefighters: live a grand adventure so to tell a great story. Or my friend Clint Eastwood, get busy living or get busy dying there, boy. Yeah.
I always say, always have a good tale to tell. I mean, have an adventure. And I think so many people get sucked into the way things are supposed to be, that linear societal, path that just eats you alive. It destroys your soul in some cases. And at the
same time, if you don't get exactly what you want when you want it, you get it. It's like, I'm waiting for that phone call. That phone call is never going to happen. When you fall in love, it's not on your time schedule. Okay, man plan, God laughs, for goodness sakes. But dude, it's there's a quote from Winston Churchill When you're going through hell, you just keep going. Brad Pitt's character in World War Z, life is about movement. We have to keep moving. Or I tell people, do something now, for goodness sakes, and it's really weird how you can flip a switch. We're having a terrible day. I'm driving home from work. Work sucks. I hate everybody, blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, that song comes on the radio and you're like, you flip a switch. So it is about attitude and it's about your perspective. And I will say this, I know my young generation doesn't like it. Life is not fair. Life is not easy. Work is hard. Marriage is not fun. And there it is. There it is.
One of the things you mentioned that I think is so true, particularly when someone's stuck in a rut, is introduce movement into your life. Yeah. The simple act of just doing something. You may not be going down the right path, but it'll sort itself out.
The one thing I've learned in the last couple of years is there's always going to be something, whether it's COVID, or the politics of life, or there's always going to be something. If you're having a great day, you cherish that. I really believe this, Pat, particularly in this day and age. Every day our kids come home from school is a great day. If there's not a shooting within a 20-mile radius, that is a beautiful day. When we can pay our mortgage and once in a while go to Applebee's or Star Cracks or whatever, or see a movie, that is a blessing within a blessing. We live in a different time, and nothing's guaranteed. It used to be you work 20 years, you got retirement. Now you got to work 80,000 years and you're going to get 5% of your 401k. And it just is what it is. That's why it's so important to have that good mental health attitude, to be happy, to cherish these things, and don't expect anything from anybody. Do it yourself, for goodness sakes.
Well, that goes to self-care, which we were talking about earlier. Talk a little bit about that, because I think self-care is so fundamental, so important, and so overlooked.
Yeah. And I think, again, because of COVID and being isolated and being frustrated, or having the government or the man or the woman telling us what to do. And a lot of people went cuckoo on this. And we saw it in politics, and we saw it when people get frustrated and doing stupid things, for goodness sakes. I think what we have to do is just take a step back and relax. And we have to accept the fact we live in a different era. This is like the new thing is not going to be another COVID that they're worried about, but the new thing is going to be artificial intelligence. It's going to be the new Phantom Terminator menace, per se. Well, you know what? There's nothing I can really do about it for now. So why don't I just go shopping or get the kids to school or take care of myself, or just, you know what? It's kind of like you go to the bathroom. Okay. Everybody poops. All right. And you got to wash your hands and flush the toilet and get some pressure. And after that, guess what? You don't care, because you're moving forward. You're doing something. We spend a lot of time getting dressed in the proper clothes and things we do in our hair and our bodies and working out and, But I think we forget, hey, this is my time. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Bob Hope was one of the first persons, God bless him, to take 5-minute naps 5 to 10 times a day. He would say, no, I'm not going to do autographs now. When I have a drink, have a cup of coffee, leave me alone. So he can be a good entertainer, per se, rather than trying to I want to get 12 hours of sleep a day. I want to get muscles. I want to do this. I want to do that. That's not really going to work. We have to adjust, and we have to accept the fact, self-care. And it's really weird. I used to worry so much about, I need to do this for Anne, Fran, and Jan, and I need to do this for Johnny, Bonnie, and Tawny. And I'm at the point right now, you know what? I'm just going to kind of slow this down and have something called boundaries. And I hate saying the word no, but sometimes I have to say, I'd like to do that for you, but unfortunately, I can't be your life coach for the next 35 years, 34 hours a day. That's not going to work. And you need good therapy. There it is.
Well, I think part of it is, as a society, we're very externally oriented. We're chasing the bauble du jour. We want to look like the perfect Instagram person, whatever it is. But that's not life. Life is lived. The most valuable piece of life, in my opinion, is that internal life and exploring our internal being, as opposed to dancing to some external song.
Well, or that, and we saw it in the 90s when you had, I call her Polaris Hilton, little Miss Hilton. And or even the show, I call it Creeping Up on the Crapdashians. We're so desperate. Oh my God, these guys have a great life. These guys are famous for being famous. And yet it's a clown show. I think sometimes we expect so much. We want to be that model. We want to be that action hero. We want. That's not the reality of life. And if you're happy on the inside, that should transfer to the outside. And I've never met anybody, Pat. I think this is a good example. I've never met anybody who's come up to me and said, Dave, I'm a victim of cancer. No, they say, Dave, I fight cancer. I survived the cancer, and every day is a good day for me. This is a blessing day. You have to see it from a different lens. And again, it has to be from the inside. I remember being in foster care or being brutalized by my mom. And yet I knew on the inside I was strong. My mom didn't even know I was working her. I learned kinesiology on how to tighten my muscles when I was being attacked. If my mom didn't feed me, I would simply steal food from the garbage cans.
What a life. And I so agree with you. I look at so many people across all age groups, actually, and I don't think that they're present. I don't think that they're living their lives. I don't think they're in tune with themselves. And they're wasting time. And time is the one thing when nobody knows how much we have, but you have to take advantage of it.
Well, and at the same time, I learned something from a lady many years ago. And I use this particularly now that I'm on the back nine of life. And I want your audience, again, to take this note. Here's the question. How many more summers do you have left? How many more good summers do you have left that you can walk or run or hold your lover's hand or watch a sunrise or sunset or just be that child from within? It's amazing, Pat, that I've always wanted to go on a cruise ever since I was a boy in the basement. And I had some friends many years ago, they went on a cruise. I said, oh my God, Hercules, tell me about the cruise. And my friend says, oh my God, it was awesome. It was worth every penny. We ate, we danced, we saw the sunrise, sunset. We made love twice a day, best sleep in my entire life. I said, oh my God, how much was it? And my friend Ray told me, I says, oh my God, you could have done that at my house for half the price. People are always waiting for something to happen. You've got to make something happen. And again, I'll say this slowly again, and this is a perfect way to close out the show. This will be on the test, ladies and gentlemen. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. That's why, Pat, your show is so important. If we had 100,000 Pats out there, I think we can start making a dent because I don't need clowns anymore, spewing vomits and vigor and negativity. I need people with common sense to step up and step out and try to give something to someone. I will never forget this, Pat. I was not doing well at age 12. My parents had separated. I knew my mother was going to kill me. The clock was ticking. As a matter of fact, the day I was rescued, the first Friday of March, 50 years ago, my mother was going to have me all alone that entire weekend, and I feared that she was going to kill me. I'll never forget one time at age 12, my homeroom teacher, Mr. Ziegler, the Clint Eastwood of teachers, eyes in the back of his head, boy. And he put his hand on my shoulder. He says, son, you're doing a good job. I'm proud of you. And I just, oh my God, I'm real. I exist. He believes in me. So these random acts of kindness, maybe they're nothing when you're the giver. You're just doling it out. But the people who believe they're less than zero and maybe they can't move on, that might be what we call the MacGuffin. That might be the swing that puts them back on top, that pendulum, that fulcrum that we all need and that we all deserve.
I think kind words can make such a difference. And, it was interesting. I was thinking about a friend of mine recently, and I realized that in all the years I had known this person, I don't think she ever said more than two or three. It gave me maybe more than two or three compliments, and they were very minor. And that was so alien to me because I'm always complimenting people, and it's sincere. I look for something I like. I like your shirt. Those are great shoes. Oh, what a great read. Whatever it is, I prefer to focus on the good aspects of things. And that really hit me hard in terms of trying to understand who that person was.
Well, that, and maybe that person doesn't feel it again from the inside, because it's about that radiation, that passion. There was a song, "Passion is no ordinary word." And I know I appear to be affable and I appear to be all over the map. But you know what? There was a line from Julia Roberts, and it was a beautiful line. She was getting beaten up with the press, and they were just da 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 da. And she said, "Slow down. I know I'm a good person. And more valuable than that, I know in my heart what is true. So be honest and true to yourself." And I'm so fortunate. I've been looking forward to doing your show. I've been very busy. We're promoting the new book and the craziness involved with that. Or there's a possible movie, or the floods here in Northern California. There's always something. So we have a saying in the fire department, Pat, the world is always going to be on fire. And sometimes you can save people and sometimes you can't. But you do. This is a perfect prayer. Do as much as you can, or as long as you can, or as many as you can. That's life. That's life. And gratitude, I think, is a big part of it. And that's why I'm so honored to be on your show. And I'm so happy. If God takes me home now, I would love to spend more time with my grandson, get him in trouble, get him out of trouble, that type of thing. I can't imagine my grandson and I getting in trouble in front of his father. "He made me do it, son, not me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm old and see, no, it's your son's fault, not me." But you know what? Again, that grand adventure. I'm just happy to be here. And I hope your audience can listen to the show at least twice, just twice, and get the meaning beyond listening, but receiving it in your heart and hopefully doing something with that information. That is the ticket.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.